So that after 8 o'clock, we got a really interesting interview with Aston Martin's head of race strategy, Bernie Collins, a lady from Fermanagh who is quite literally working on the F1 pit lane. So that coming up at 8 o'clock. We're just 10 days away from the start of the new Formula 1 season. The Irish team to go to Twickenham to take on England on Saturday has been announced. Nomak Hansen, Robbie Henshaw or Jack Conan in the starting 15. Louise Galvin and Rory O'Connor are going to talk about that. And then on the football show, we'll hear from Stephen Kenny. I was out in Abbottstown a little bit earlier on where Stephen Kenny was being presented to the media after yesterday's confirmation that he has a new 2-year contract as the Republic of Ireland manager until the end of Euro 2024. So plenty to come on a busy night in the Premier League as well. We'll have updates on all of those games. Richie McCormack is with us. Good evening, Richie.
Evening, Nathan.
Joe Molloy should be there as well. Evening, Joe.
He is. Evening, gents.
We are also on the football show going to be joined by Philippe Auclair to talk about just the most remarkable day at Chelsea, and a day that potentially is one of the most seismic in English football in recent times. The news that Roman Abramovich's attempt to sell Chelsea this morning halted after the oligarch was sanctioned by the UK government as part of its response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What it all means right now is that it seems Roman Abramovich can't sell Chelsea. It means the club on a practical level can't sell any further match tickets. So if you're a season ticket holder, you'll still be able to go to Stamford Bridge. But the rest of the tickets, Chelsea cannot sell any of those. They can't sell any merchandise. They've had to sell their enormous club shop. There are issues around the hotel at Stamford Bridge, and it seems as though they're not going to be allowed to sell any hotel rooms there either. They have been given a special licence, which means they are still allowed to play fixtures. Staff will be paid, and as I say, existing season ticket holders will be allowed to attend games. The news has just kept on developing all day. In the last couple of hours, Chelsea's shirt sponsor 3 has requested that they temporarily suspend its deal, which includes the removal of their brand from their jerseys and around the stadium. This, Joe, is what an awful lot of people have called for over the last few days. There did seem to be a real reluctance and reticence on the part of the UK government to sanction the oligarchs and Roman Abramovich. But now that they have, it has massive footballing implications, which obviously we're aware pale in comparison as to what is actually happening on the ground in Ukraine right now. But I don't think anyone knows how this is going to end. From a Chelsea point of view, it is fairly shocking in its speed of development.
It is. I mean, I don't know what changed for 3 over the last 24 hours, so I wouldn't be giving them too much credit. As for what happens to Chelsea, it is very dramatic news today, there is no doubt. And things like, well, match tickets not being sold and no away fans, and will you even be able to buy a drink at the stadium, and you can't buy a jersey at the club store, and I think there's a £20,000 limit on away matches. These are all headline grabbing, and we're not used to them. I think, though, this will be sorted out relatively quickly. The bottom line here is the UK government do not want Roman Abramovich to benefit a single cent from anything that Chelsea do, and so that's why there's a halt on everything. I would anticipate very, very shortly there will be something akin to a trust set up, whereby all and any monies which the prospective buyer pay for Chelsea will go into that trust, and once there's absolutely no chance of Abramovich getting his hands on it, then things will be just fine. So I heard Julian Knight, the MP, even on TalkSport earlier on this morning, and he was acknowledging something like that will be set up. So at the moment, everything's frozen, and it is very dramatic. But I do think Chelsea will return to some kind of normality actually pretty soon. And I think the sale will go through. And again, the money will just be held away from anything to do with Abramovich, but the sale should be able to proceed. And so in the medium term, I don't think this is going to be the terrible drama or tragedy for Chelsea Football Club that you could kind of anticipate today. It's not in the UK government's interest to kill Chelsea. It's not in their interest to slowly bleed Chelsea. And so I don't think it's going to happen. And the other thing which just jumps to mind today, everybody's saying, was this a landmark, watershed moment for the Premier League and ownership? Let's just remind ourselves what's happened here. The Premier League have done absolutely nothing. They have sat on their hands. This is a UK government move. The Premier League have welcomed in Saudi money just in the last few months. So the Premier League deserve precisely zero credit for this move today. This is all down to the UK government and their sanctions.
Richie, you've been following this throughout the day as well, and the various strands as the news has come through. Without wanting to go back to that terrible COVID line of a new normal, as Joe says, there will be workarounds through this to ensure that Chelsea continues. Will it be a normal continuation for Chelsea supporters, or do you think it'll be a new normal where they are no longer one of the biggest clubs in the world, the current World Club champions, the current European champions? Will they still be able to buy the Romelu Lukakus of the world after all of this is sorted out in whatever way it's sorted out?
Short answer is I don't know, but I would suggest that won't be the case anymore. I think the days for Chelsea of paying whatever they saw fit for a player in the transfer market, you look back to that summer that Frank Lampard had control of the checkbook, bringing in the likes of Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, so on and so forth, at great expense. They're not going to have another summer like that ever again, because whatever owner does come in is going to be less flahuluk with their money than Abramovich was. That's like, nobody was able to spend money. Nobody's able to write off 1.5 billion in debt just because they kind of feel like it, in the same way that, you know, any other that Abramovich has done. They will need, as Joe says, to get this done quickly. The government in the UK has made inklings of the fact that they will make provision for a sale. So essentially they'll have to handle it. But there will be, you'd imagine, as Joe pointed out, an escrow account into which the funds for that sale will go until they figure out the adequate place for them to actually end up, because that's the question at the minute. This has all happened almost as quickly as Abramovich came in. There was handshakes with Ken Bates at the side of the pitch at Stamford Bridge and talk of, you know, multi-million-pound players almost overnight at Chelsea, and now the plug has been pulled quite quickly. And you can't say they don't deserve it, because this, you know, you happily spent the money that was coming in. Everybody knew where it came from. Everybody knew how it was made. There can be no complaints, and that money is suddenly pulled away for the reasons, especially, that it has been taken away.
So Chelsea are playing this evening, and the game can go ahead. They have been given a licence for the game to go ahead. Again, how much of any of this matters, who knows? Will 3 be on their jersey tonight, or have they had to go out and get a new kit with no sponsor on it?
What's upset 3?
We'll find out in the next 10 minutes.
Hours?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not here certainly to speak on behalf of 3. I assume the fact that the British government decided now that there were sanctions, that they were left simply with no choice. Clearly they decided before that, morally, that they weren't going to make this decision, but the sanctions obviously have forced their hand. Is it going to force the hand of Nike, or, you know, is this sorted out so quickly that Nike can just stay as their shirt manufacturer? The fee, and maybe this passed me by at the time, Richie, a 15-year deal worth 900 million is what Nike agreed with Chelsea.
Yeah, one of the biggest in the world. Yeah, one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the world at the time. So Nike, you'd imagine, will be slower about holding that deal, and will adopt as they are doing, it seems. They're not commenting on this story tonight. They're taking a wait-and-see approach to see how it develops, because that's a big deal to undo, and Chelsea will definitely feel that if it suddenly goes away overnight. The shirt sponsorship deal is £40 million a year. Chelsea are a Premier League team. They're the world and European champions. They won't be short about getting shirt sponsorship deals. Mightn't be at the same level, sure, but they'll definitely get another one if 3 decide to pull the plug permanently. And Hyundai are the same. Hyundai are basically saying, we're assessing this situation, seeing how it goes. But right now, within this 24-hour bubble, or however long it lasts until they are sold, they are a toxic brand, and nobody will want to touch them, and nobody will want to make a deal with them. Whoever is going to buy them now, you'd suggest, is probably going to get them at a knockdown price, because suddenly the 3 billion that Abramovich is asking for is out the window, and this just goes to the most suitable buyer. And you wonder who's conducting this sale now, who's looking after the sale, who makes sure that the person coming in is the right. And I'm setting aside the fit and proper persons act that the Premier League pretends to have every now and again, but who's actually looking afterward? That will be the concern from a Chelsea perspective, that it's not just the first past the post, that it's actually the right deal that gets done. Yeah,
I'm really interested to hear what Philippe Auclair has to say on all this, and I suspect, Joe, a lot of what you were saying there is what will come true. But in terms of a knockdown price, if Roman Abramovich is owed 1.5 billion, where does that 1.5 billion disappear to? If there comes a time where the sanctions are stopped and taken away, will he not be able to call in that debt, at that stage, and therefore the value of the club is at least 1.5 billion. So, like, what is that going to mean for any prospective owner?
But isn't he on the record as saying he's no intention of claiming that debt? He's written it off.
Well, that was last week, Joe, when he wasn't facing sanctions from the UK government.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, if he wants to come back and potentially try and bankrupt the club he professes to love in the next 18 months, that'd be a hell of a move. I suspect Roman might be trying to keep the head down over the next couple of years. So I'd be amazed if he came back looking for that 1.5 billion, to be honest. So I don't know. Nathan is...
Nobody thinks of the players, Joe, of course. 20 grand is all they're going to be allowed to spend on travel. There's a very good chance that they're in Norwich this evening. There's a very real possibility that Chelsea would have flown up to that game. So even from their training base, they'd get in the private jet, they fly up to Norwich. Like, Norwich is quite a trek from London. It's probably 2.5 hours. So they're definitely flying up and then getting the bus. Mm-hmm. A private jet is minimum 80 grand.
Yeah, they were at Gatwick when they found out that the club essentially was in escrow.
Okay. And look, my heart bleeds, I mean, what a dreadful proposition for the Chelsea players. And, we send them our best, Nathan. I do think medium term this will be sorted out relatively quickly, and there'll be a queue of buyers. And, Chelsea have a lot of, as opposed to for a huge proportion of Abramovich's era, when that 1.5 billion, a fair proportion of it would have been spent and it was all down to him. They have in the meantime put in place certain foundations which are very lucrative. Like Chelsea, more than any other club, have players out on loan and sold from their academy, and it makes them a huge amount of money each year. I mean, their policy really has been to hoover up all the talent, and then sell that subsequent talent off when the vast majority don't make it in the Chelsea first team. And, with financial fair play, they had to start manoeuvring in that direction. So I think there are solid foundations there. They will be sold for however much. I mean, I'd be very curious to know where that money goes to now. It was Abramovich's wish that it would go to the victims of the war in Ukraine. So that was his choice. In effect, that was him saying, I'll pass that money on. So I don't know where it goes now necessarily. Given that it's probably not his right to decide where the money goes, be that to himself or to the Ukraine situation. So look, these are all the things that'll be ironed out in the coming days. But again, listening to various UK government spokespeople this afternoon, I think they were all acutely aware that for them to destroy Chelsea Football Club over the next couple of months would be a very, very bad move. And I don't think it's their intention to do that. Their intention is simply to make sure Roman Abramovich does not profit in the slightest from Chelsea going forward from today.
So Philippe Auclair coming up on the football show at 9 o'clock to talk us through all of that. We'll obviously keep a close eye on Chelsea's match as well. I would love to hear from Stephen Kenny. I was out in Abbottstown earlier. Obviously he was pretty pleased with life, as you would imagine. Finally they got the deal done. It took 3.5 months, but apparently that's what happens. That's what happens when the lawyers get involved. It was all agreed. It was all just fine. Jonathan Hill and Stephen Kenny met before Christmas. They were all happy to continue, and then the lawyers got involved. But no real complications. No replacement for Anthony Barry as of yet. It could well be done before the game against Belgium. There was a feeling maybe they were holding off to announce the two together, but nobody confirmed quite yet. It's going to be fascinating to see. I've never been as interested to see who they come up with as a coach, to go from Damien Duff to Anthony Barry. You've got a lot to live up to there.
Was Kenny Cunningham mentioned? Is he in the mix?
I put his name in the mix today.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's the one for me.
Well, Stephen Kenny, it might just get too confusing with the two Kennys, but Stephen Kenny, I'm sure he was watching and listening last night, Joe, and was enjoying yourself and Kenny, your reaction to Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain, and that may well have swung it for Kenny.
Well, we were saying to Kenny last night we could get him to interview Stephen Kenny, and we can call it Kenny on Kenny, and he was very sold on that idea. He felt there was a future in that series.
You wouldn't have called it just Kenny Live?
Kenny Live. Indeed.
Kenny Live, genius.
So many good options here. The Kenny Cunningham Tuesday press conference of Match Week would be something I think I'd be happy to go along to as well.
Absolutely. So that's coming up after 9. And after 8, we got an interesting interview. Formula 1 is back in 10 days. I think Drive to Survive is out over the next couple of days, the latest series. And Bernie Collins is from up around Enniskillen and has one of those great jobs. Certainly looks like one of those jobs where you're living the dream. She's the head of race strategy for Aston Martin. So she sits on the pit wall. She is the one who makes the decision as to when the driver is going to pit. She decides on the race strategy. It seems an incredibly pressurised job. While we always see the team principal, actually quite often they're just the public face. It is the head of race strategy who's making all these crucial decisions. So she's been in that job for 7-8 years and is actually finishing up quite soon with Aston Martin. But just really interesting on the pressures involved and the flow of it. I didn't get an opportunity to talk about the new Aston Martin team principal, mainly because I was a little bit worried about it. The new Aston Martin team principal, Joe and Richie, is Mike Crack. Mike Crack.
Yeah.
That's a difficult thing to say.
You go with Michael then. You go with Michael. You don't abbreviate then. You know what's coming if you shorten that one.
Yeah, you're Mick or Michael.
Go with Michael.
Well, he's going with Mike.
Mihal.
A lot of confidence to go with Mike.
Can't do that.
It's a difficult thing. I do wonder if Bernie is the only person who sort of finds that funny and everybody else who works for Aston Martin just doesn't get it.
Potentially. That's a fascinating job. So I presume increasingly any sense of intuition or feel goes out the window, and most of her decisions are based on the data and the numbers, and she's having to compute a lot of that stuff very, very quickly.
Well, Aston Martin are Lawrence Stroll's team, who again, if everything seems to go back to Drive to Survive, Son drives for the team, but they are putting in a massive investment in a new factory in Silverstone, which is the biggest new investment Formula One has seen in years. And while she is on the pit wall, there are hundreds of race engineers back in Silverstone all the time. And the biggest and most important part, I think, is the communication between getting what they're saying and passing that on to the driver at the right time, and also having the relationship with the driver where they trust you. Because as we've seen at times with Lewis Hamilton, with Max Verstappen, they can get fairly peeved if you're asking them to do something they don't want to do. So she's working with Sebastian Vettel, who, 34, four-time world champion, probably more experienced than anybody else on the team. So I think it's that communication. You have got so much information, been able to distill it quickly, and in a multi-million pound sport make the right decision. I suspect you don't last too long if you make the wrong decision too often.
Was just going to say there'll be a fall guy or a fall woman pretty often there, and even figuring out what the important information is. You could have, I would say, countless pieces of information. What's actually significant, and what's enough to make you change your race strategy that you've been talking about all week. So, amazing job.
Richie, do you want to run us through some of the stories then in the news round?
Yeah, we'll move away from Chelsea. I guess we've covered that enough. They are, of course, away to Norwich tonight in the Premier League. Elsewhere, Southampton play host to Newcastle and Watford go to Wolves. All of those games going underway in 10 minutes' time. There's a 7:45 start at Ellen Road where struggling Leeds face Aston Villa. It's now Sevilla 1, West Ham 0 with 12 minutes to go of the first leg of their Europa League last 16 contest. Munir Al-Haddadi getting that goal on the hour mark. At 8, Rangers welcome Red Star Belgrade to Ibrox, and at the same time in the Conference League, Leicester play Rennes. That's at the King Power. Jonathan Sexton returns to the Ireland starting 15 for Saturday's crucial Six Nations game away to England. His replacing Joey Carberry is one of 6 changes to the team that started against Italy. Hugo Keenan, Andrew Conway, Bundy Aki, Cian Healy and James Ryan also return despite starting the last 3 games. Mac Hansen misses out in the matchday 23 entirely. Farrell was asked today about leaving Jack Conan on the bench in favour of Peter O'Mahony.
Obviously, both great players. Again, we just think the balance is right for this game. Pete's in good form, not just physically, but he's a good emotional leader for us as well. Leadership's a big part of every team performance, and obviously we know what Pete brings as far as the set piece is concerned and the breakdown's concerned, but the rest of his game has come on an absolute treat. His attack stuff has really stepped up. So look, I think he played really well against Italy. I also thought that Jack played really well coming off the bench and had a big impact. And again, I think the balance is right for this week.
The news round brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. That team news then, Joe, that's probably the biggest surprise. maybe Mac Hansen, with the form he's been in, would feel somewhat aggrieved to see him lose his place to Andrew Conway. But we'd Rory O'Connor in earlier saying that, well, Mac Hansen had scored the tries. Andrew Conway hadn't played poorly over the first couple of games, and obviously far more experienced than Mac Hansen. But Jack Conan, with Ronan Kelleher and Andrew Porter already missing, Jack Conan, it felt, was almost a nailed-on certainty. So as a Lion, as the summer he had, bit of a surprise to see O'Mahony in?
To a point. I didn't think Conan had the greatest game of his life in Paris, I'm being honest. And O'Mahony's a line-out option, and the Irish line-out wobbled in Paris as well. So I would think those two factors are the primary motivations for O'Mahony being in, line-out in particular, the line-out especially. And then, England, Twickenham, bit of needle, Peter O'Mahony in there. That kind of stuff's important as well, to be honest. And I do agree with Andy Farrell when he says that Peter O'Mahony's improved the attacking aspect of his game. Like, it's now no longer a surprise when Peter O'Mahony throws a brilliant offload. Like, he's been doing it for the last 18 months, 2 years, and really embracing that side of his game for Ireland. I'm not sure we see him do it as much for Munster. But I would say, Nathan, the line-out option is the real driving force in that decision.
Where does this leave Chelsea in terms of the league, as a text in? Are they basically in administration? Will there be a points reduction? Right now, it doesn't seem so. They're not in administration. They're sort of in a holding pattern that at the very least will last until the end of the season. Maybe if the buyers don't emerge the way they expect them to do, and it does seem as though there's quite a list there, maybe then for next season they may face some issues down the track. But that, from what we've seen, and things are moving fast, but from what we've seen, it doesn't look as though that's a possibility for this season.
No, it doesn't. And I was listening to Simon Jordan, who obviously is former owner or chairman of Crystal Palace and would have a feel for these things. And he was saying, for instance, if they were to win the Champions League or win the FA Cup, that money can go into some kind of a trust and await the new owners. And even with the crowd situation whereby only season ticket holders can attend, he was also saying, like, don't be surprised, for instance, if Chelsea gift the away tickets to away fans. All of these mechanisms will suddenly be dreamt up to allow... it's hard to imagine Stamford Bridge with just season ticket holders. So he was saying, like I said, they may well gift the away fans tickets, and they may well find a way to gift home fans outside of the season ticket holders tickets. So I would think they've had frantic discussions like this all day, and they'll find a lot of solutions. Like, they can't have Stamford Bridge open and not have, for instance, the where you get your chips or the burger van equivalent or a cup of coffee on site. All that stuff will have to be sorted out.
Richie, just tell us what's happening in the golf.
There's no happening in the golf at the moment, Nathan. Basically, they're going to have a decision on a restart coming up in the next 5 minutes at Sawgrass. Play was suspended a couple of hours ago due to the inclement weather there. Shane Lowry at the time was 1 under through his first 6 holes, and there was a 3-way tie for the lead on 4 under par involving Tommy Fleetwood, Will Zalatoris and Harold Varner III. Seamus Power and Rory McIlroy were due to go out either side of 7 o'clock. That's naturally going to be pushed back several hours now, it seems, at this stage. So we're just waiting in the next 5 minutes to see what the PGA Tour say regarding resumption. The practice facilities, I believe, are back open again, so fingers crossed they get back underway shortly.
All right, it is a £20 million prize fund, the biggest ever winner's check in golf, 3.6 million if the weather forecast is horrific for the 4 days. So hopefully we get some golf in the Players' Championship to keep us going for the weekend, Joe.
Yeah, Monday finish. Monday finishes are
a beautiful thing.
I'll be starting to feel a bit sick Monday evening if it turns out there's a Monday finish.
Richie,
Nathan, I'll be in touch.
Could be your big, it could be your big moment, Richie. This could be your big moment. Great stuff, lads.
I've got Chelsea apparently on Sunday, so that's going to be great crack.
Oof. Well, you enjoy that now. You enjoy that. We shall talk to you on Sunday as part of our commentary double header on Sundays off the ball. All right, let's get to the cash machine.